I have always been drawn to solitary roads and abandoned highways, the rustle of leaves against the bumper, the isolation of endless stretches of asphalt. I used to tell myself that the vast emptiness of night was full of promise, but nothing could have prepared me for that inexplicable detour, for the moment when my odometer registered a town that had never appeared on any map I'd ever seen, nor any satellite scan. It was as if the town had slipped through the fractures of reality, where geography itself grew malleable under the weight of whispered legends. It began on a cold October evening, when my car's headlights struggled through a dense fog. I had been driving for what felt like hours on a forgotten back road in a part of the country rumored to be forsaken by more than just modern convenience. At first, the pall of mist lent the road an eerie beauty, a promise of hidden treasures in a landscape erased by time. But when my tank neared empty and the engine sputtered uncertainly, I knew I'd passed any foreseeable gas station for miles. I pulled off to the shoulder, hoping to find something. A sign, a settlement, anything that could offer refuge. Instead, I found myself staring at a narrow, winding lane that beckoned deeper into the darkness. With reluctance battling a persistent curiosity, I switched on the ignition and began to follow the unlit road. A few minutes later, the trees gave way to a patch of cleared land, and I emerged into the outskirts of a town that didn't quite seem real. At first glance, the buildings were old, their facades bearing the patina of neglect. The streets were empty and oddly symmetrical, as though designed with an obsessive attention to some long-forgotten urban plan. I slowed, my heart beating in a syncopated rhythm that echoed in the silence. I parked my car near a weathered stone wall and stepped out into the night. The chill in the air wasn't just physical, it seemed to seep into my bones, an omen that I was not meant to be there. I recalled an old superstition. Some places exist on the boundary between memory and myth, places that study you rather than welcome you. The town's name, as I would later learn in fragments from whispered conversations with its reluctant inhabitants, was Graven Hollow. But that night, no name came to mind, only a gnawing sense of dread and a feeling of being observed from every darkened window and crooked alley. My first steps into Graven Hollow were tentative. The pavement, cracked and overtaken by fissures of time, led me past abandoned storefronts with broken glass that shimmered like scattered jewels in the moonlight. There was an inexplicable odor in the air, a miasma of damp earth and decay that clung to every surface, and beneath it, a faintly sweet fragrance reminiscent of long-extinguished flowers. I wondered if someone had left them as a tribute to memories or as a warning. A small signpost on the corner, its lettering worn and barely legible, read, "Welcome to Graven Hollow." I paused, mesmerized by the paradox of a welcoming gesture, here, in a place that radiated foreboding. It wasn't long before I realized that I was the only visitor this night. The silence was not only heavy, it felt like a presence, a quiet observer of my every move. I had the uneasy sensation that the walls themselves were closing in, the narrow lanes twisting into corridors leading to hidden depths beneath the surface of a seemingly placid town. I began to walk along a cobblestone alleyway, each step echoing off ancient bricks. The deeper I ventured, the stranger the details became. I came upon a row of houses whose windows were darkened, some with curtains drawn as if to hide secrets from prying eyes. One building in particular caught my attention, ETTD, Victorian mansion seemingly out of place among the vernacular structures around it. Its towering silhouette loomed like a specter against the ink-black sky. The door, set into a frame of rotted wood, was slightly ajar, as though inviting me to step inside. I hesitated for a moment, battling my rational mind against the primal urge to uncover its mysteries. At some point, I convinced myself that this was a place where history and horror coexisted, where the lines between what was real and what I believed to be myth blurred into a single dark narrative. I stepped inside the mansion, and the air grew colder still. The immediate interior was shrouded in shadows. My eyes took time to adjust to the gloom that seemed to have a texture of its own. There were portraits lining the walls, their subjects depicted with eyes that followed my movements. Each portrait whispered of untold sorrow, of stories best left buried beneath layers of dust and time. I explored room after room in a quiet daze, the echo of my footsteps mingling with the creaks of a settling old house. In one chamber, I found a large mirror, its surface smudged and distorted as though it had seen too many years of neglect. When I passed it, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing behind me, a fleeting shadow that vanished when I spun around. I must be imagining things, I told myself, yet deep down I realized that this was Graven Hollow. In Graven Hollow, nothing was as it appeared. Hours blurred together as I navigated the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. I discovered a dusty library filled with yellowed volumes on local lore, town legends, and accounts of disappearances that seemed to hint at a history steeped in the macabre. One battered journal, its pages brittle and ink faded, recounted the tale of an entire community swallowed by an unnameable curse. The words spoke of a town that existed at the intersection of worlds, where travelers stumbled into a domain that thrived on their fear. I read in a hushed voice, as if not to wake the specters of the past, and with each word, unease took deeper root. It became clear that Graven Hollow was no mere town. It was a living memory, an anomaly hidden in plain sight. Though my rational mind protested, I couldn't deny the matter-of-fact way the journal recounted events that seemed to have parallels in the present. I felt a chill that was not caused by the cold, a dread that crept up from within and told me, in no uncertain terms, that I was not the first soul lured to this forsaken place. That night, I settled in a small room on the second floor of the mansion, compelled by a need to document what I encountered. I lit a lone candle on a rickety wooden desk and began writing in a journal, each word a desperate attempt to capture the reality of Graven Hollow before the town's secrets swallowed them too. I wrote about the whispers that threaded themselves through the hallways at midnight, about the echoes of lost footsteps in empty corridors, and about the inexplicable urge to peel back the layers of history by every creaking door. As the wind howled outside and the old house creaked in protest, I realized that I was dancing on the edge of something both wondrous and unspeakably terrifying. The deeper into the night I delved, the more the mansion seemed to come alive. Shadows shifted with a mind of their own, merging and separating in impossible contours. At times, I sensed that I was no longer alone. I began to catch the faint scent of perfume or hear the soft murmur of a lullaby, as if the echoes of a bygone era were attempting to reach me from beyond the veil of mortality. I grew both fascinated and frightened by these manifestations. They were the tapestry of a history not entirely dead, of lives interwoven with tales of horror that defied believability. Sleep came fitfully, if at all. I must have dozed off in fits, jolting awake every time I heard a sound, a creak in the floorboards, the faint scrape of something against wood. And in the half-light of sleep, dreams invaded my mind. I dreamed of endless corridors stretching into darkness and of ghostly figures beckoning me onward. I awoke with my heart racing, drenched in sweat, the whispers of the night echoing in my ears. Morning offered little reprieve. The first pale rays of dawn revealed an entirely transformed mansion. What had seemed confined to the realm of nightmares took on a tangible quality, a palpable gloom that draped every surface like a shroud. I stepped outside, and the town lay spread before me in an unnatural calm. The vacant streets, lined with rows of deserted homes and silent shops, suggested that time in Graven Hollow moved at a different pace, perhaps reluctantly, perhaps in accordance with its own inscrutable laws. I began to explore the town further, my curiosity overwhelming my fear. The streets twisted in bizarre configurations, leading me through courtyards overgrown with weeds, past crumbling statues whose expressions were frozen in silent lament. Every so often, I encountered someone glancing furtively from behind a shuttered, window, or disappearing into an alley before I could call out a greeting. It was as if the residents of Graven Hollow were not ready to offer their stories to an outsider. Their eyes, when met, held within them centuries of sorrow and an unspoken,